Gold prices just hit record highs, and the world's wealthiest people are moving their gold away from places they've trusted for decades to a vault that didn't exist 5 years ago. A vault now holding billions of dollars in gold bars for clients who suddenly don't trust the old system anymore. And when you see what's inside this fortress and why it exists, you'll understand why billionaires decided the safest vaults in the world suddenly weren't safe anymore. The fortress. The vault is called the Reserve, and it sits near Singapore's Changi Airport in a building that looks like a regular warehouse from the outside. But underground, it's something completely different. The foundation goes 32 meters down into the earth, and that's not just for show. When you're storing 10,000 tons of silver in one chamber, you need a foundation that can distribute that kind of weight without cracking. The floor is built to handle loads that are 45 times stronger than what you'd find in a parking garage. And that's just for the silver storage. The main gold vault is where things get really serious. It can hold 500 tons of gold, which at current prices is worth about $64 billion. To put that in perspective, that's enough space for 40,000 gold bars, and each one of those bars weighs about 12 kilograms and costs roughly $1.6 million. These aren't the small gold bars you might see in movies. These are what the industry calls good delivery bars, and they're the standardized size that major banks and governments use when they're moving serious amounts of gold around the world.
The prices could rise further. Gold is now on track for its best yearly performance since 1979.
Most individual investors break these down into smaller bars that weigh about 1 kilogram each and cost around $128,000, because that's more practical for buying and selling. The security system is built to insurance company standards, called UL Class 2, which means the walls and doors are designed to withstand a breach attempt for at least 1 full hour. And that might not sound like much, but vault security isn't about making it impossible to break in. It's about creating delays. Every layer of security adds time, and the more time it takes, the more likely someone notices and responds. The vault uses a safe deposit box system where each container can be individually accessed without opening the entire vault. This makes it efficient for clients who need to retrieve their gold without exposing everyone else's holdings. When a client wants to access their gold, they go through multiple security checkpoints: biometric identification, video surveillance, armed guards who monitor every movement. The entire process is designed so that you never interact with anyone else's gold and no one else can see what you're doing with yours. Some clients visit once a year to check on their holdings. Others never visit at all because they're storing it for their children or grandchildren and they don't plan to touch it for decades.
Gold's true value really shines during times of uncertainty and times of crisis.
The people storing gold here aren't just wealthy. They're a specific type of wealthy. Western entrepreneurs who built their own companies and manage their own wealth. Family offices from Europe and the United States that control billions across multiple generations. And increasingly American clients who used to keep their gold in New York or Fort Knox, but decided they wanted it somewhere else. Somewhere further from their own government. Somewhere they believe will still respect property rights 30 or 40 years from now. The fall. For over a century, there were only 2 places where the world's wealthiest people stored their gold: Switzerland and London. Switzerland built its reputation on banking secrecy and political neutrality. The Swiss had laws that made it illegal for banks to reveal client information to foreign governments. If you were wealthy and wanted to hide money or gold from your own country's tax authorities or legal system, Switzerland was the place. And London was the traditional trading hub where over $100 billion in gold changes, hands every single day through a network of banks and vaults that have operated for generations. But something happened that changed everything. In 2014, the United States government put massive pressure on Switzerland to end its banking secrecy laws. The US wanted access to information about American citizens hiding money in Swiss accounts. And Switzerland, which depends heavily on its financial services industry, had to choose between protecting client privacy and maintaining good relations with the world's largest economy. They chose to cooperate. Swiss banking secrecy died, and with it died the guarantee that your assets would remain hidden from your home government.
This is key. given that it takes time for monetary policy to affect economic performance and prices.
Then, in 2022, something even worse happened. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Western governments decided to freeze Russian assets held in European banks. And Switzerland, which had maintained neutrality through 2 world wars, and the entire Cold War, joined the sanctions. They froze billions of dollars in Russian oligarch assets, including gold stored in Swiss vaults. Wealthy clients around the world watched this happen and realized something terrifying. If the Swiss government can freeze Russian assets today based on political decisions made in Washington and Brussels, they can freeze anyone's assets tomorrow for any reason that suits them politically. It wasn't just Russia. In recent years, governments have frozen assets belonging to Venezuelan officials, Iranian businessmen, and Chinese executives. The pattern was clear. If your home government or a powerful ally of your storage country decides you're a problem, your wealth can disappear with the stroke of a pen. No trial, no due process, just a sanctions list, and your gold becomes untouchable. London faced similar problems. After Brexit, the United Kingdom's relationship with European financial regulations became uncertain. And as the EU pushed for more transparency and more control over financial assets,
Forecasts play an important role in the process. They facilitate forward thinking.
wealthy clients started wondering if their gold in London vaults might be subject to European seizure orders or new regulations they couldn't predict. Add to that the political instability of multiple prime ministers in rapid succession and a cost of living crisis that has some politicians calling for wealth taxes, and suddenly London didn't feel as safe as it used to. The 2008 financial crisis had already planted seeds of doubt. Lehman Brothers collapsed. Bear Stearns collapsed. Major banks that everyone thought were too big to fail turned out to be exactly big enough to fail. Clients who had gold stored in bank vaults or held through investment products suddenly faced the possibility that they might not be able to access their assets. Some banks temporarily froze withdrawals. Others required clients to prove ownership through paperwork that had been lost or never properly filed. And wealthy people remembered that chaos. They remembered not being able to get to their own money when they needed it most. The neutral fortress. Singapore positioned itself perfectly to take advantage of this crisis of confidence. The country has no enemies. It's not aligned with any major power bloc. It didn't sanction Russia. It doesn't have disputes with China or the United States or Europe. It's genuinely neutral in a way that Switzerland no longer is. And this matters when you're thinking about storing wealth for 20 or 30 or 40 years, because you need to believe the country won't suddenly change its political alignment and put your assets at risk.
During times of crisis, the value of the other reserve assets will tend to fall.
Singapore also won't nationalize gold, and the reason is simple. The country's entire economy is built on financial services and trade. If Singapore suddenly seized private gold holdings, it would be economic suicide. Every wealthy client would flee, and the country would lose the industry that makes it prosperous. Switzerland could survive without being a banking hub. It has tourism and manufacturing and pharmaceuticals. Singapore can't. The country has almost no natural resources. No oil, no minerals, no agriculture. Everything it has comes from being a trusted place to do business. So there's a built-in guarantee that comes from the country's economic structure itself. The country is also incredibly well defended. Singapore has mandatory military service. It has one of the most advanced air forces in Asia. It has a military that's designed specifically to make any invasion so costly that no one would attempt it. And it has strong relationships with both the United States and China, which means any country thinking about threatening Singapore would have to deal with serious diplomatic consequences. This combination of factors makes it an ideal location for storing wealth across generations. There are also tax advantages. Singapore doesn't tax capital gains on gold. There's no goods and services tax on investment-grade gold and silver, and the country has very strong private property protections built into its legal system. If you store gold in Singapore, it's treated as private property that the government can't touch without due process. And that due process is much harder to bypass than in countries where emergency powers can be invoked to freeze assets. Other Asian cities are competing for this business. Hong Kong has vaults. and it's closer to mainland China, which makes it convenient for Chinese clients. But Hong Kong is also under Chinese government control now after the 2020 security law. Wealthy clients worry that if tensions between China and the West escalate, assets in Hong Kong could be caught in the middle. Dubai is another option. It's politically neutral and has strong property protections. But it's also more exposed to Middle Eastern political instability. Singapore sits in a region that's been stable for decades and shows no signs of major conflict. The migration. The reserve was completed in 2024, and almost immediately it started filling up with gold from Western clients. Americans who looked at the political situation in Washington and decided they didn't want all their wealth tied to the stability of US institutions. Europeans who remembered how quickly governments can change the rules when they're under pressure. Australians who wanted their gold closer to Asia, where they saw the future of global trade. Getting gold to Singapore isn't simple. You can't just put gold bars in your luggage and fly. Most clients use specialized shipping companies that handle high-value cargo. The gold is insured during transport. It's tracked every step of the way. And it moves through customs with proper documentation, so there's a legal paper trail proving ownership. Some clients fly private jets with their gold in secure containers. Others use armored vehicles to move it from their current vault to an airport and then onto Singapore. The entire process can take weeks and cost tens of thousands of dollars, depending on how much gold you're moving. These clients aren't buying gold through funds or futures contracts. They're buying physical bars that they can see and touch and store. And the reason comes down to something called counterparty risk. When you buy gold through a fund or a bank, you're trusting that institution to actually have the gold they say they have. You're trusting them to stay solvent. You're trusting them to honor their obligations.
Here in India too, gold prices rose today. They followed the global surge, and this comes after a brief dip last week when the rupee strengthened against the US dollar.
And as the 2008 financial crisis showed, even the most trusted banks can fail. In 2008, nobody knew which major bank was going to collapse next. Lehman Brothers failed. Bear Stearns failed. Other banks needed government bailouts to survive. And if you had gold stored in one of those banks, or held through one of their investment products, you would have been in serious trouble. The numbers you saw on your account statement might have been accurate one day and meaningless the next. Physical gold stored in a private vault eliminates that risk entirely. It's your property. It's sitting in a specific location, and if the financial system collapses, your gold is still there. Right now, London still dominates global gold trading, with over $100 billion changing hands every day. Singapore handles less than 1% of that volume, but the founder of the reserve believes that's about to change dramatically. He thinks Singapore, along with Hong Kong and Dubai, will become the new gold capitals because they have the right combination of political neutrality, legal protections, and government support for developing the industry. And there's another factor driving this migration: trust in the US dollar. For decades, the dollar has been the world's reserve currency, which means it's what countries use to trade with each other and what they hold in their reserves. But recently, there's been growing concern that the dollar's dominance might not last forever. US government debt keeps growing. Political instability keeps increasing. And some wealthy clients are looking at these trends and saying, maybe I shouldn't keep all my wealth in dollars or in dollar-denominated assets. Gold is the traditional hedge against currency collapse. If trust in the dollar fails, the US government would need something people could trust to back a new currency, and that's traditionally been gold. A lot of clients storing gold in Singapore are thinking about these kinds of scenarios. They're not predicting it will happen tomorrow or even in their lifetime, but they're storing wealth that's meant to last for generations, and they want to make sure that if the financial system does face a major crisis, their families will have assets that hold value. The reserve can hold 500 tons of gold worth $64 billion, and it's nowhere near full yet. The silver chamber can hold 10,000 tons worth $16 billion, and it's still mostly empty. But both are filling steadily as more clients move assets from west to east. The vault operators say they're seeing new clients every week. Family offices that manage wealth for multiple generations, tech entrepreneurs who made fortunes in the last decade, real estate developers from Europe, oil and gas executives from the Middle East. all of them coming to the same conclusion that Singapore is where their gold should be. Switzerland held the world's gold for over a century. That empire fell in less than a decade when banking secrecy died and neutrality collapsed. Singapore built a fortress in 5 years that's designed to last for the next century. And the wealthy are voting with their gold bars. They're choosing Singapore not because it's convenient, but because they've lost faith in the institutions that used to protect them. The question isn't whether more gold will flow east, it's how fast the fortress will fill up. So is this paranoia or smart planning? Are billionaires overreacting to temporary political instability, or are they seeing something the rest of us are missing? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this changed how you see the global financial system, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to understand where the real money is moving. Thanks for watching.